Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger. I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're one of the leading organizations in the world supporting a stakeholder approach to management, increasingly known as stakeholder capitalism, if that term doesn't get totally politicized, because it's nothing but creating returns for investors by creating value for employees, customers, supply chain partners, communities, and the environment. So today we're going to be focusing on our class number 6 on enterprise engagement tactics. And this class focuses specifically, I should say class 4, on the tactics that organizations use to engage people. And I'm going to be covering a list of the new, should we say, toolkit for the chief people officer who's in charge of aligning stakeholders, the interests of stakeholders across the entire organization. But before we get into the lecture part of this series, I'd like to bring in 4 experts in different areas of business management to get their views on the state of business management today and how well are we integrating and aligning the tactics that we use to engage our stakeholders. And to get these perspectives, I'd like to introduce Jervis DeChico. He is founder and CEO of Prosper Bridge. It's an HR compensation and benefits support company, and he offers a unique service where each employee gets a check-in from a trained professional each month. And also not only is there a check-in, but that person can find out if they have financial needs and perhaps help address them. Darwin Hanson, he's founder and CEO of Talent Management Evolution. It's an HR technology and compensation company. He's got a powerful technology for managing human capital analytics, and he's working very feverishly right now to help companies deal with their compensation challenges. We have one of the nation's leaders in business operating systems, Todd Hanson. He's founder and CEO of Catalyst Performance Group. And what makes him unique is that not only is he an expert in business operating systems, which is a strategic and systematic way to aligning your organization on a daily basis, but he's also very involved in training, incentive recognition programs, technology, and return on investment measurement. And then finally, to get a UK, I should say, a European Union perspective, we have Dr. Heiko Morterer. He is a board member for 4C Group Management Consulting. They're a full-service human capital management consulting company that does work with leading multinationals. And his company is the first company to provide certifications in ISO 30414 human capital reporting. So thank you, gentlemen, for helping us kick off this webinar today with your perspectives. So Darwin, starting with you as an expert in compensation and human capital analytics, how's companies now are coming to you feverishly to deal with their compensation issues? How strategic and systematic are they being in facing compensation? Are they looking, and again, speaking generally, do you think companies are taking a more holistic approach, or do they still tend to be more tactical oriented?
Well, first, Bruce, thanks for bringing us all together and setting up this panel. I think my experience right now is that people are doing the same thing they've been doing over the last number of years, and that is that they're concerned about those things that are hot topics for them. And right now, compensation seems to be a hot topic because as they're trying to hire people and bring them into the organization, they're only focusing on those things that they see, which is the compensation part of it. But they really need to take a more holistic approach to that. I mean, and that's the thing I don't believe that they're doing as well as they should be doing. And I see this because, well, we do some analytics on this, and what happens is I ask my clients all the time, what are their programs? What programs are they seeing a return on? What are their employees what are they looking for in the programs that they have? And they can't usually tell me. All they can tell me is that they have a particular job that they need to fill, and it's hard to fill. So they think that the answer to that question is to give them additional compensation. And, granted, we do need to make sure the compensation is set properly. It has to be correct. It has to be right. But people are looking for more than that. They're looking for all aspects of total rewards, and particularly they're looking for their development, they're looking for benefits, all of the different aspects that make up a total rewards package. And one of the biggest parts right now is really wellness. How are your employees doing as employees, as people? And that's something that we don't really look at that carefully. And so I think we're still short of that goal of taking a holistic approach and using, compensation rather than using it as the primary tool in determining how we're engaging with employees, but use that as a kind of a base level tool to say, okay, our compensation is right, we're paying people correctly. Now let's get on to the other aspects of total rewards that actually make a person want to stay, want to be engaged, and want to join our firm.
And Darwin, from the standpoint of silos, do they come into play here? Do you find that oftentimes at a bigger company, the people that are doing compensation are cut off from people that might have some influence on the total reward strategy?
Yes, it's not that uncommon, even to have different silos between compensation and benefits. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing both, but most of the large companies, they have separate silos even for that. And then if you're talking about employee wellness or the employee development, they are definitely in separate silos. And the managers of those groups are really not talking to each other and not creating an overall plan for the organization.
So, and this is one of the things we talk about throughout our entire education on stakeholder management. The biggest problem is silos. Jervis, what do you see on that framework? You sell a benefits package that really cuts across compensation and benefits. What do you see? And you call on HR people, speak with HR people all the time. How strategically are companies looking at this total rewards, or is it still more talk than action? How receptive are companies to really looking at employees from a whole person standpoint?
Well, Bruce, again, thank you for putting us all together. The short answer to that question is it doesn't feel to them like they can afford to be strategic right now because there's so many fires to put out. Between the Great Resignation, the war for talent, rising wages, companies are just struggling to deal with the issues right in front of their faces. And that really pushes them into those tactical solutions that many times they're simply not getting value from. And to Darwin's point, what employees really want and need are not outcomes or not programs or not dollars. They're not benefits. They need outcomes. They need an understanding of how to take the resource set that you're providing as an employer and turn that into the things that they want and need on an individual basis in their lives. And so as an employer, if you want to attract, develop, and retain talent, if you want to inspire, incentivize, and reward great work, you need to know exactly what in your total reward strategy is working and is not working. You need to build trust with your people by connecting with them, by asking them what's going on, listening to what's going on in their lives. And then you need to deliver solutions to make it easier for them to attain those outcomes I was speaking about earlier, one of which, as Darwin spoke about, is wellness. And then finally, you need to make sure that you're paying them and that you're not paying someone else. And what I mean by that is the way our financial system works right now worldwide, but particularly in the United States, is corporations and lenders have gotten so good at snapping up dollars from consumers that corporations' paychecks are getting eaten up by rising housing costs, education costs, healthcare costs, high cost lending like credit cards, payday loans, title loans, et cetera. And so ultimately, organizations that think they're paying their people are actually paying this broken system. And we need an intermediary to fix that, create a new environment, and help both organizations and their people maximize the value in those total reward strategies.
And it doesn't, well, the way I'm listening to what you're saying, I don't know many companies that are really looking at it this way, Jervis. Am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't either. I don't know any. And like I said, it feels to them in our conversations like they can't afford to think about it right now. We're seeing, organizations grow in numbers and stay with PEOs longer, which is almost always a mistake. Not to start to create
PEOs?
Custom plans. Yeah, I'm sorry, professional employment organizations. So they're co-employing their employees with another organization that's basically handling their HR because they don't feel like they have the bandwidth to handle HR themselves. So they're outsourcing a lot of their strategy because they don't feel like they have the bandwidth to deal with it. But the reality is, if they don't deal with it, they're going to find themselves continuing to struggle in this war for talent and continuing to struggle to stay relevant and to serve all of their stakeholders effectively.
What an amazing thing in this country. I don't know whether you have that in Germany, Heiko, of where, yes, there's an enormous industry where companies outsource their human capital. Think about that. They're outsourcing are people really their number one asset if they're outsourcing it? Todd, this whole, business operating systems. Why don't you quickly tell everybody what a business operating system is, and then everyone will quickly understand the relationship between a business operating system and this discussion.
Yeah, happy to do so, and thanks for having me here. And let me just comment on Darwin and Jervis's things that they had to share. I absolutely love this. I hope that there's incredible viewership of this webinar. Darwin, this holistic approach to making sure that we have an employee that's not only engaged, but is truly taken care of in all aspects. It's a rare thing to see, and it's absolutely wonderful. And Jervis, I certainly understand, and I see my clients struggle with this, and that is the tyranny of the urgent, right? Strategy. It's like, we just have to take care of the busyness at hand. So I bring solutions to clients, fundamentally creating strategy, excellent strategy, using a multitude of tools from some of the world's greatest business minds, and then turn that into execution. So we truly have the systematic way in which we achieve our goals created by our strategy or guided by our strategy. And a business operating system is fundamentally created and curated tools to cover all aspects of business to run at best of class. And curated tools may come from Jim Collins and Good to Great, Patrick Lencioni and Team Health, Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach, and Vern Harnish and scaling up and those things. So I work with business owners or CEOs in small and medium-sized businesses and their leadership teams to craft all the strategy, including all the incredible things they can and should be doing from an enterprise engagement perspective that drives stakeholder capitalism, and then take the journey with them. The photo of my background, I have a headline, which is, you want to go fast, go alone. Want to go far, go together. So I pull together that horsepower and make sure we keep our goals and our strategy in mind, but actually get stuff done with full day sessions. And sometimes it's just that kind of discipline and bringing an outsider in to actually execute on the things that they dream about accomplishing, because vision without execution is delusion. Stole that from Peter Drucker.
So when you first come into a client, how much alignment or how much misalignment is frequent? I would imagine you probably come in with a fair amount of silos, hidden agendas. Is that the typical state of an organization, have you found over the years?
This is like a giant hairball, and you need to learn how to orbit the hairball, because business, as it grows and the industry gets more complicated, complexity just creates chaos. And so there's always some state of chaos. Sometimes it's worse than others. And to create clarity and alignment is like the first key to actually figuring out how to get things done. So yeah, we still spend pretty much a full day at just teasing out, hey, what are the roles and responsibilities for each of the people here in our leadership team? And with some incredible aha moments, like, is this the way that we should structure the organization to really move it forward? And do we have the right people in the right seats? And so, yeah, trying to create some order out of the chaos, because, the giant hairball is like a black hole once you suck you right into it and get stuck with all the tactical and busyness of the day.
And I'm going to get back to the question about the waste on this in our second round of questions here. But I would imagine not only is there waste, but there's a lot of unhappiness that's caused by this, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. How about something as clear as just a vision of an organization and the purpose and core values, and making sure that's really truly infused into the culture, becomes a codified culture. There's an elite group of companies that really do this well. But employees want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and to really truly understand the purpose and what are the core values so they can get in alignment and things like that, and know that they're having an impact and creating value with not only employees but shareholders and and the vendor community, the environment, all this 360 approach to things is what helps get them up, fired up, going into the job, realizing that they're also understaffed, or they have the typical client-related issues that they always face and stuff like that.
Well, thank you, Todd. And I'm going to get back to you on human capital, so hang on.
Yeah.
Heiko, a lot of people often think that the world is very, very different. And take heavens, vive la différence, as the French say. Germany, thankfully, is very different from America or the US. But I would think there are some things that are probably structurally similar.
Yeah.
In the silos and tactical thinking, are those quite prevalent in German businesses as well, where it's fire drills, it's tactical, reactionary, silos, or is Germany more efficient than the US, and your typical business is strategic and systematic with a clear purpose, as Todd beautifully said, baked into the culture with alignment across the silos?
I completely know what you mean. So first of all, thanks, Bruce, for having me. I really appreciate this. And and so greetings from Germany to everyone. So coming back to your question, it's definitely so what Todd just outlined, and I really love the idea of aligning the operating model to the vision and to the strategy of an organization. And I completely agree that this is something that is really not very implemented in reality out there. And I also am completely in line with what Darwin just said and Jervis in terms of that companies are focusing on the most pressing topic and not on the probably most important and strategic one. So this is just like you described corporate Germany to me. So what you just explained, Bruce, is this would require that companies have developed an HR strategy, a human capital strategy that is really either derived from the overall business strategy, or that is even an integral part of the business strategy. And this means that these companies do not only have to have this HR strategy, they also should have the resources to deliver this strategy. And to be honest, I'm only aware of very few organizations that do this or that are able to do this. And the reason, and the reason for this is that that reactive behavior rather than active or strategic behavior is the topic and the behavior that I see in organizations. And this is definitely due to a lack of resources, because they are focusing on the most pressing topics and on the most pressing issues and the most pressing projects, like mandatory project, risk-related issues, solving pressing problems like a burning platform and things like that. So from my experience in Europe, I can completely relate to what you just outlined from this in this perspective. And if you talk to CEOs or to top management of companies and their view on human capital management, what most of them say is, well, what we expect from our HR function as a minimum requirement is ensure payroll. And the second thing is ensure data protection with regards to our employee data. And the third and last thing is, well, in a minimum delivery with regards to employee lifecycle processes like recruiting and onboarding and something like, offboarding, for example. And that's it. And if this is your minimum requirement with regards to human capital management, then this, you shouldn't be very surprised that you have really problems with Great Resignation and things like that. Because, so from my perspective, this is a strategic topic, for companies. So most companies are product centric, or technology centric, or client centric. Some even are process centric, but only very few are really employee centric in terms of employee centricity, over client or product centricity. And And this is definitely the reason why I see a lot of silos in those companies, and I see a lot of problems that are there from a human capital management point of view, and also from a stakeholder engagement point of view.
Well, thank you. And Darwin, this brings me back to you because of your work in the human capital analytics area. My question is, I look back at the total quality management revolution back in the 80s, when companies just built high levels of waste into their manufacturing. They just assumed they had 9% defects and they were getting away with that. And then all of a sudden, the Japanese and other Asian manufacturers realized that this was an opportunity. And of course, they transformed the American industrial, even though we fought back, we have never regained the market share that we lost. Are we treating people, Darwin, the same way? Are we really managing human Are we baking a huge amount of unhappiness into our business models and just accepting it because we don't think we can measure it?
Yeah, I think accepting is the right answer to that. I don't think we're trying to bake it in. I don't think we're overtly trying to make sure that people are unhappy, but I don't think we're actually going out to try to improve the process either in order to make a difference. I think what we're trying to do is, and everybody's really talked about this, and that is that we're trying to react quickly to the first thing that comes up, rather than look at a strategic approach to what do we need to do to make this all work well. And so I don't think we've quite got to that point where we're going to put quality back into the entire process. But I think there are a number of people that are starting to think about this and say, okay, I think we need to move this way. But like everybody has been saying, it costs money and it takes time. And more than that, it actually takes a plan. So you have to actually sit down and think about this and create a plan for this. And planning is a lot harder than reacting. Reacting, you go to your office, you wait till something pops up, and then you go after it. Planning, you have to think about this stuff ahead of time and try to determine what it is that you're going to do. And that's way more difficult.
Well, Todd, you are an expert in getting companies to plan, because that's what a business operating system is. So Todd, give us the honest answer. I would imagine that it's tough to onboard a client. In other words, they say they want to do it, they get convinced, and then all of a sudden they're pulled into that meeting and they're all there. What is it? What are people so scared about planning? Does it take days and days and days? Why are people scared of planning?
Oh, that's a great question. I end up working with clients that have decided that the pain of the status quo is great enough that they want to do things different. And I guess that would probably be the key thing that identifies for me, a good client is if they're ready to do things differently. And so it starts at the top for sure. It usually starts with a CEO or a business owner. Sometimes they're both, right? And they go, hey, we've grown like this. Now we plateaued, or we're in decline. Business cycle over time. Usually there's a great increase of time, and then it gets maturity and it declines. And great leaders know that they have to they have to do something different. It's through innovation. It's refocusing. It's how about getting out of some of the businesses or the products or services they've done. It's focusing on what it is that they do best, and then they can get back on this trajectory. So I think there just has to be a level of dissatisfaction with their current trajectory. And there are some of those people, there are awesome people out there that are just, always looking to do it bigger, better, smarter, faster. And those are the companies that recognize that there is a need to create great strategy and then execute. And I can't bring it all to them. I mean, I rely on people like Darwin and Jervis and Heiko to really do a deep dive in their areas of specialization. But then, as I'm sure they can attest to, it's like, does anything get done? And so that's where, again, they don't work with me unless they're really committed, because I'm not a consultant. I don't come in there and tell them what to do. We're going to figure out what we need to do, and then we're going to get it done. Otherwise, the working relationship doesn't continue, because I meet with them for a full day every quarter, check in with them in between time, jump into their leadership team meetings. And so, hey, if they're serious about changing, which many of them are, again, I think it's either the pain gets great enough, or they just go, I'm driven, I'm an achiever, I really want to do a whole lot better, and I know I need to do things different.
Well, I'm going to have one last question for all of you, so stand by. Jervis, you are in the unique situation of your employees talk with other people's employees one-on-one in confidential. Do you think that, and you've probably learned a lot from that. Do you think that CEOs would maybe look at things differently if they really knew what their employees were going through? I mean, do you think that many CEOs know that 60% of their employees are miserable on Sunday night? And I wonder whether they know that, right? And what does that mean? If you're miserable on Sunday night, are you watching the back of the company that you work for? Jervis, what are you learning from those conversations about the cost of disengagement or the hidden elements of it, if any?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bruce, and it's timely. Gallup just came out with their state of work report that shows about $8 trillion a year are lost to disengaged employees. And so for those CEOs, some of them are great leaders that think they're pouring into their people, that think they're providing solutions, but because they're taking this tactical approach, let's use a real life example that we see all the time with the employees that we talk with. Mental health is a big issue right now. Burnout is a big issue right now. So you survey your employees, they say they want a better mental health solution, and you roll out in the United States an EAP, which is an employee assistance program. You do that with the best of intentions because those programs offer at a very low cost to you, the organization, a number of free counseling sessions per year, usually in the 4 to 6 range, and your employees can access them. You do that without really understanding that EAPs only get 7% utilization rates because they're cumbersome, they don't work very well, and the system is very hard for employees to trust. And so you have just done what you think is exactly what your people want, but you've actually provided a program that isn't very effective, that isn't very utilized. And now the employees are frustrated because they don't feel like they were heard. And you're frustrated because you've tried to provide a solution and it's not getting utilized. And that comes from that tactical thinking instead of saying, okay, what can we really do to solve this challenge? And so, yes, the answer to your question is, I think CEOs would be surprised. I think that they, again, they're not trying to create unhappy people, quite the opposite. And a lot of them would say they're people first leaders. But again, they haven't taken the time to build a strategy, look at the different components. And what that ultimately means for everybody is a lot of waste. That EAP is now a wasted cost, a wasted resource. In fact, it's worse than that. It's making people more frustrated. And so, this tactical approach, I call it shiny object syndrome, means that we're basically, it's like when you go to a trade show and they give you that tote and then you go around and you gather all those tchotchkes from the different tables, okay? And you walk out and you go, what did I get all this crap for? That's what employers are doing. They see this solution like, oh, I got to put that in my tote bag, and that'll take care of everything. And then at the end of the day, everybody's getting frustrated because this tactical solution and a low resource. I love what Heiko said, that the resources are simply not getting devoted to solving the problem. A low resource, it feels good as an employer to say, oh, I'm only spending $1 or $2 per employee per month on this solution that should solve their problem. It's not going to.
So Jervis, I think some of the things you've also learned is that most employees don't even get involved in their benefits programs. In fact, a lot of employees don't even know what they are. Is that often the case?
Without a doubt. We know statistically employees don't understand their benefits packages. Open enrollment is one of the worst things we do to people. You get a 90-minute cram session and all the information you're getting is coming from the salespeople that are selling you the products that you're supposed to be utilizing. So you don't trust it anyway. And then you're supposed to make these elections that are going to have a huge impact on your life and the potential value you can draw from your total rewards program. And you're doing that without any real education or guidance. And so one of the things that we do is we make that a real-time process where as your life is shifting and changing, we're going to help you understand how you can maximize the value of the entire total rewards program that your employer has in front of you, and really create opportunities for both organization and its people to extract the full potential value from the programs they're offering, and really to understand which of those programs are useful and meaningful and which are a waste and should probably go to the scrap heap.
Okay, Jen, so one question last for all of you. Heiko, we're talking now finally about a move like in quality management from reactive to ad hoc. It took 10 years, but in the sphere of quality management, in quality manufacturing, we really did make big strides.
Yeah.
Do you think we're finally moving into that mode for people management, or do you think this is a short-term little a fad? We're talking about it and it's going to go back to the way it was.
So unfortunately, no, so this is a great question, first of all. And unfortunately, I think we're not making a lot of progress in that regard at the moment. And I mean, the reason why might be just look at the managerial firepower of HR functions and compare it to the managerial firepower of other functions in organizations like sales, product development, product management, or key account management or something like that. So in most companies, these other functions have much more managerial firepower than the HR function. And how on earth should an HR function and systematic human capital management or people management really and authentically reach the top of the CEO agenda authentically if all the other functions have much more firepower than the HR function, managerial firepower? I'm not talking about the number of employees that are, assigned to an HR, but managerial firepower. So as long as the managerial firepower, as there is an asymmetry, in the distribution of managerial firepower in companies. So this is clearly a reason why this is still a long shot, Bruce, I'm afraid.
In other words, the HR profession does not have the chops, as we would say in Yankee speak. It does not have, in enough companies, the authority.
And there's still, luckily there are some exceptions from this observation. But, overall, if you compare a lot of companies and observe a lot of companies, overall, I'm afraid that's the actual situation. And this is a long way to go, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you for your candor. Darwin, I'm going to ask the same question of our last three guests to wrap up here. Darwin, your thoughts. Do you think we're finally going to make progress in the US toward a more strategic and systematic approach to human capital management now that we have the metrics out there that we can actually measure the impact on people on the bottom line of bad people management?
I hope so. I hope we make progress that way, because I think it creates a better place for people to work and a better experience for the workers. But I just read an article this morning about somebody saying that we should ignore metrics and we should go with our gut, because after all, our gut is much better than the metrics. And it's like, we still have so many people that just don't quite get it. We need to be able to analyze data in order to understand the past and then not repeat it. And we just seem to like to, in HR, we have this tendency to move in cycles. So we do something, we see it, oh, it's a wonderful thing. So everybody kind of moves that way. And then somebody thinks of something else, and then everybody moves that way. And so it's not really a strategic plan, it's just moving things around. And then we rename it so it sounds different, but it actually is the same as we did 20 years ago. So it would be much more important if we were to learn from the past. We don't have to repeat it. We just have to learn from it and then look at it and say, okay, how can we make this better? And it's those organizations that are thinking that way, and they're thinking in terms of strategy rather than tactics, that will help propel the rest of the group to move in that direction. So I think there's hope. I think there's some movement, but I just don't think it's quick. So I don't expect, like, for next year for us to get together and say, hey, we did it, we made it, we're all there. Every organization is great now. I don't think so.
Maybe in a lifetime. Jervis, your thoughts?
If you look at tremendously successful companies like VaynerMedia, like Virgin, like WD-40, like DaVita, and you look at what makes them tremendously successful, in all four of those cases, the number two person in the company is not the CFO, it's the CHRO or the equivalent title. And the CEO at all of those companies is keenly aware that people is their most important asset, and they keep an eye on that strategy. The flip side of that coin is I encourage everyone to take a look at a company called Irrational Capital, which just goes around and snaps up firms that do a really poor job taking care of their people. They make very minor systematic changes, and they see the value of those companies and the revenue of those companies accelerate extremely fast, and they sell them. So this is really a VC firm that's just coming in and identifying opportunities where people are managed poorly and making a ton of money off it. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, because of the data that's out there, we're going to get forced into this. But to Heiko's point, right now, in most companies, HR, and I'm not sure HR can do it, Bruce, we might need a new department, like a Department of Human Capital, because HR is very much what Heiko described. It's a compliance and systematic department. It doesn't have any real political or strategic power within an organization. And I'm not sure we can fix that perception. But yes, I think it's going to be necessary, not to sound too much like a doomsdayer, but if we don't do it, I don't think capitalism is going to survive, because there are too many people out there saying, hey, this work isn't getting me what I want, so why should I do it?
Todd, you have the last word.
Right. I would say never underestimate an entrepreneurial spirit within some of the best companies that are out there. In the corporate world, it's the entrepreneurial minded CEOs that really have the potential to change the world, and they start right on their own little sphere of influence. And when an organization, I got a new client actually, that 15-year-old client, been very successful in the software industry, and had a one-on-one conversation with an extremely successful entrepreneur, multiple businesses, worth $1 billion. And he got inspired. And probably the big takeaway was that my client said to himself, I need to dream bigger. I mean, I'm just constrained by my own paradigm, my own mindset. And he started to dream really big, and shared that with some of his team members. Is like, yeah, we want to get on board and do something and figure out what this really big thing is. Collins calls it the big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And when people are inspired to do great things, then usually they get to a point, sometimes they run into the brick wall, or they do enough reading, they go, and I have to do things differently. And that's where EEA comes in. And those of us that are on the panel is, hey, we'll help you figure out how to get there, because things have to be done differently in this strategic and systematic way. I mean, I just love that. That's what I'm all about. So I have hope, if we look across all organizations, what's the percentage and things like that? I don't know. I mean, I just look for and have found those companies that go, we're going to set the world on fire. We need some help to do it. And we're going to pay attention to things like stakeholder capitalism. So I'm optimistic.
Well, and it's funny, gentlemen, because what we're going to be doing going forward at the EEA is highlighting those companies. We're going to be doing case studies and interviews. The media likes bad news. We like good news. So we're going to highlight the great companies that you guys know. And so we invite you and Heiko, we're going to be interviewing some of those companies with you. So all four of you, I thank you so much for helping us today. We're now moving, folks, to the lecture portion of this. I'm going to go really quickly through the tactics of engagement that some of these gentlemen here can help you with at their companies. So we're now going to switch to kind of a lecture mode. Gentlemen, thank you very much. You can sign off or hang on and listen. And again, thanks everybody. I will, on the webinar that you get, I will have the contact information for all of our speakers here, so you can reach out directly to them. Thanks again, and I'm now going to go to the lecture mode here, so bear with me.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Bruce.
So
Thanks.
thanks again. So now I'm going to be going into the lecture program where this is part of the formal class for enterprise engagement. And we're going to be going into these different tactics quickly and how to look at the tactics. Most companies use these tactics, but they use them in a tactical, disconnected way. And so I'm going to talk very quickly about how they can be used strategically. And if you're just listening to this and you're interested in more detail, people that join the EEA, the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, either as an individual member or as a corporate member, get a complete learning kit. They get these slides that they can do at their own pace, or you could do at your own pace, books from our faculty, et cetera, et cetera. So these are our sponsors, and we thank all of them. And these are the resources that the Enterprise Engagement Alliance offers for free. Or at very low cost, all sorts of learning tactics and whatnot. So I'm going to now quickly go through the tactics of enterprise engagement. And I think the most important thing to recognize is that it's a strategic focus. Sorry, the slides went nuts here. In other words, the whole idea, when you're looking at any of these different tactics I'm going to show you in a minute, they should never be looked at in a vacuum. They all interrelate. How do audiences interrelate? How do the tactics interrelate? And only about under 20% of companies have any kind of clear human capital metrics. And these metrics on the right, human capital value add, human capital ROI, revenues, profits per employee, customer, channel partner, willingness to recommend, diversity, equity, and inclusion success, training and development efficiency, and the return on investment of your expenses. These are critical human capital tactics that most companies are not looking at carefully. And these here, this is your engagement toolkit, strategic process design. And these are some of the things that our speakers can help you with, or others in our community. Exactly how are you going to manage your day-to-day people operations across the organization? How are you going to foster brand and culture alignment? What kinds of human capital measures are you going to track? What kind of assessment and feedback process are you going to have? What does your recruitment and onboarding strategy look like? And how does it roll up to your purpose and your values and your culture? Collaboration and innovation. How do you make sure that people are innovating, sharing information at all times? Diversity and inclusion, that's a business opportunity, not a social equity issue. That's a personal, if you have a social equity issue with that, that's something else. But it's an opportunity for businesses wherever they are to have the most diverse community of employees, customers, distribution partners, supply chain partners. It's just better business. Our panelists mentioned wellness and safety. There are platforms and systems that can help you bake that into your culture. Job design, that's narrowly defined as what you have people doing each day so that they don't go insane with boredom, but that can also refer to the entire workplace experience. And there are companies like Trader Joe's and others that have great systems for job sharing, changing jobs throughout the day so that people don't get bored, so that they look forward to going to work because each day will be a new learning opportunity. Communications in every media. We need to communicate regularly with people. How are we doing that? Learning, gamification, loyalty, rewards and recognition, technology, human capital, internal and external reporting. These are all the new toolkit, or the toolkit of the Chief People Officer that Darwin had talked to before. And I don't know what happened. I threw this slide presentation into some sort of mode, and I don't have time to fix it now. But essentially, what you need to be looking at is a gap analysis, looking at all of your different tactics, culture, leadership, recruitment and diversity, compensation and benefits, training and development, communications, all of these. We should be doing a gap analysis on each one of these things. Are we measuring the ROI? And ROI isn't always in dollars. ROI can also be in achieving goals. Customer satisfaction, that's a return on investment. It doesn't necessarily have a dollar value. Safety doesn't necessarily have a dollar value, but if you reduced accidents by 40%, there is a value to that, okay? And what's the value of happiness? What's the value of enjoying going to work on a Monday morning and looking after the best interests of the organization? And then I want to be looking at how well is that tactic being aligned with my brand and culture? And am I digitalizing it? Is it available on my smartphone? There are technologies today where all of this can be on your smartphone. Alignment effectiveness. How well are all of these tactics aligned? Is your training and development supporting your incentive and recognition programs? Is your communication supporting your training and development? Is your communication supporting culture? Is your onboarding supporting leadership? You want to look at the interrelationships of all of these things. And then finally, if the CEO isn't committed, you're going to have one heck of a problem. And that's usually a big problem. The CEO just, doesn't really care. There's no measurement. Everyone gets a budget. They go out and spend the money, and it's basically a sunk cost. And essentially, companies should really be looking at performance improvement in an iterative process. How does assessment connect with leadership and culture, connect with recruitment and diversity, connect with compensation and benefits, communications, training and development, innovation, recognition and rewards, analytics, feedback? All of these should be part of a continuum, interrelated. But when you have a company filled with silos, where training is fighting with the guys and ladies running the incentive program for resources, when somebody wants to go off and do an assessment, an employee survey, but nobody really cares about it, this is where the waste comes in. And I can assure you that the waste is, we're building at least 10 to 20% of waste into our organizations based on quality manufacturing. Back in 1980s, we were building 10% of waste into our business models. I think it's safe to say we're doing that with people, and that most CEOs, and I mean most, are driving with one eye on the road. They're not aware of the analytics that would tell them how much they're losing in terms of money and unhappiness. So I'm just going to run through very quickly some of the different tactics. And you're probably aware of most of these tactics, but what you want to be thinking about is how do they interconnect? So one of the first important ones is brand and cultural alignment and definition, making sure that the company has a consensus-based approach to what its brand and its purpose is. What does that company look like on its best day? As Alcini of BCAT likes to say, it's a brand alignment company in our family. Brand and culture alignment is not just a bunch of slogans. There's actually a process involved with getting people in the room and defining that process, building that alignment, defining what that company looks like, and then on its best day, and then establishing a management dashboard with human capital metrics that are relevant to that. And today I mentioned engagement technology because we're at the beginning of a revolution. I believe that engagement technology for stakeholders is pretty much where customer relationship management was back in the 1990s, very early stage. But today it's possible to put every one of those engagement tactics I mentioned on the smartphone. They're different technologies, and those are preferred vendors in our Enterprise Engagement Alliance community who have engagement technologies that can help you literally digitalize almost every aspect of an organization's engagement process. Usually the business model is a SaaS model or advisory and management fees, a support fee. There might be fees for the points issuance and whatnot. But the ROI is higher levels of engagement, and it's highly measurable because you can connect qualitative with quantitative information. Assessment and feedback is mission critical. Worker voice is a term often given to it. Many companies ignore this powerful force. They do annual surveys, look at them, and then put them up on a shelf somewhere. No, it's got to be simple and easy for employees to share how they feel, their mood. It's got to be easy for management to detect red and yellow zones within the organization. Generally, the business models for these are advisory service, sometimes SaaS fees, sometimes per seat fees. But if you do it right and you use the information to improve your productivity and quality, you can see improved performance, better ideas, more solutions, more people watching your back, identifying problems, etc. Recruitment, pay, and onboarding. Again, Darwin had talked about that earlier. Companies really should align this entire process with their purpose and their brand. What is their purpose? What is their brand? What is their story? What are their values? And that should be part of the entire recruitment, pay, and onboarding process. And many companies do this very tactically, especially in a situation right now where they're desperate to hire people. But generally, if you're going to use an outside vendor, they're going to be advisory fees for talent branding. If they're recruiting, of course, percentage of salaries. But if you're doing it right, you're going to have higher retention and a greater willingness to recommend. Diversity and inclusion should not be segregated into a corner office and headed up by someone who is also segregated. Diversity and equity inclusion has to be part of the business operating system. And that's really how you organize your company. DEI should not be about who you donate money to. It should not be about press releases. It is a process for building a broader community of employees and customers and supply chain and distribution partners into your entire business culture. And if you're doing it, if you're hiring a minority or a woman to sit her in a quiet office, in a corner office to give out money, you're probably guilty of what some people call woke capitalism. And I'm being blunt. You're wasting money, because the best diversity, equity, inclusion strategies bake them into everything that you do, because obviously if America is 40% brown, you're not doing business with 40% brown or minority people or 50% women or 52% women, you're missing market opportunities, you're missing talent opportunities, you're missing supply chain opportunities, you're missing community opportunities. So look for companies in this space that are linking their activities to performance, not just to hitting EEOC goals. This isn't about compliance, this is about business growth. And again, you should be looking at this in terms of measurements. And the impact should be higher human capital ROI, human capital value add, greater willingness to recommend, higher productivity, more revenue per customer, more revenue per employee. They're practical measures for DEI. Job design, critical area, way overlooked. How can we design, especially in the factory areas where we have so much turnover? How can we make the jobs more interesting? How can we get people excited about them? How can we make people feel a sense of purpose? How can we diversify the jobs? There's a whole field developing around job design. They're experts at our enterpriseengagement.org. We've just written an article about one. So this is a really critical area. How can you make jobs, factory jobs, menial jobs, customer service jobs more interesting? Because if they are more interesting, people will be more engaged in watching your back. Communications is mission critical today. Again, I mentioned the fact that there are these employee engagement or enterprise engagement apps that can make this very easy. But it's really about being strategic. What's your story? What are the key points? What's your purpose? What are your values? What's the information people need to know? What's the best way to distribute it? I think smartphones today are probably the best way. Not all of your employees have email, but almost all of them have smartphones. Breaking the story into snippets. People cannot absorb long and lengthy, even though I love to write long and lengthy articles, people read generally the first 50 words. And then we need to repeat things a lot. People can't just hear it once. We've got to hear it multiple times. And then you really want to look at how can you get two-way communication? How can we encourage people through social recognition platforms, through our Slack or our Teams platforms, or our suggestion systems and worker voice? How can we really give people an opportunity to give us suggestions, new product ideas, identify obstacles? Learning, again, a critical area. Most companies are moving away from the old 3-day classroom approach. Again, taking advantage of smartphones, a term that Seth Godin made popular, drip marketing, drip learning, quick little snippets, fun little games. Look at the game Wordle and how popular that is. Well, you can make games about the information for your own company. And again, this should be strategic, and the learning should support not only the skills that employees need, but they support the values. How do we express appreciation in this organization? How do we recognize people? All of this should be part of a learning strategy. And today, of course, you could be paying advisory fees, and now there could be per seat fees for a SaaS model, for gamification. And again, if you're doing it right, you're going to get higher productivity. People, and how is it when they learn skills? When they learn how to do things, they do them faster and better. They don't have to ask somebody else. They can do it on their own. Learning is an enormous productivity enhancer. Collaboration and innovation, just as important. Fostering people to work together, to collaborate, to come up with ideas. Again, there are companies that can help you do this, advisory companies. There are technologies that can support collaboration and innovation as part of your, your whole really digital employee engagement solution. Mission critical area. Again, the fees can be advisory fees, SaaS fees, return on investment fees, gain sharing fees. Incentive programs are one of the most frequently used but misused strategies. They can work fantastically if they're done right, or they can be a disaster. Generally speaking, you want to make sure that you're not just rewarding the top 20% who would have already won anyway. You want to make sure you're incrementally improving the middle 60%. You want to make sure that you don't just promote the goals, that you also promote the actions which you've taken more of will help you achieve those goals. You want to separate your reward strategy from compensation so that people remember them, so that they have an emotional connection, so that there's peer recognition. If you give somebody a check or cash, chances are there's not something they're going to talk about with their peers. So cash is the best and only form of compensation. I highly recommend it. But when it comes to recognizing people for incremental performance, you want to find a means that's meaningful to them, that is commensurate with their effort, and which creates an emotional connection that creates a buzz around the organization. There are companies that'll help you do this. Some of them will only charge you for the rewards. Some will charge you for setup fees for the technologies. I think a great model is pay for performance. When points are issued, you pay the company for having, spurred the desired behaviors and outcomes. Loyalty programs to spur repeat business. These programs are often also very, very poorly run. A lot of them depend heavily on points and compensation rather than building a whole relationship with somebody. And the big opportunity in loyalty is to really connect the dots between the points program, the recognition, the product, and the relationship. And that is to select gifts and rewards that are very meaningful to people, tie rewards and benefits to plateaus that people can easily track, and then really create a social experience around it. Tie it into communications, tie it maybe into a crowdsourcing thing where your loyal customers can give you ideas and feedback. Maybe they get special privileges. The idea is to really get them as part of your family. Make them feel part of your community, make them feel like they're owners. And again, they're experts that can help you do this. Advisory firms, technology, loyalty platforms, voice of the customer, voice of the employee, etc. Recognition, another powerful tool that's often misused. A lot of companies just do length of service and employee awards for achievement. Really, the way to go is to use recognition and appreciation to support your organizational goals. What are the behaviors that, if done more of, will lead to success? And today, there's a lot of technologies that can help you not only deliver rewards, but also encourage those behaviors, social recognition, recognizing other employees for those behaviors, allowing employees to give others points. But you really want to focus on behaviors and actions and values. And the length of service awards, they're nice, but I don't think anybody stays at a company to achieve any kind of length of service award. I think you'll get a lot more mileage by focusing on critical behaviors. A lot of these companies will charge you advisory fees, technology fees, reward fees, but really look at the ROI. Are you getting employee retention? Are you getting higher employee referrals? Are you seeing greater productivity and quality? Are you seeing, a greater ROI on your human capital? Recognition is a very poorly measured tool that can be measured a lot better. And again, rewards, there's an entire industry of brands, of non-cash rewards, travel programs, again, as part of a very effectively run structured programs. These can be powerful ways to create an emotional connection with your employees, but make sure that program structure is fair, that it recognizes the middle 60% to improve their performance, not always the same people who would get it anyway. And look for experts that are focusing on program design, return on investment measurement, et cetera, et cetera. Don't just give things away and think and survey people and ask them whether they like their prize. They may like their prize, but you didn't necessarily get anything out of it. And then finally, all of this boils down to human capital. There are incredible data today of metrics. You can't, people say, oh, I can't apply metrics to people. Well, if that were true, the Olympics would be out of business, baseball would be out of Olympics, football, soccer, whatever, hockey, they'd all be out of business. Metrics are a very human thing. We use metrics all the time to gauge our performance. There are world-leading experts in our family of companies that can help you, but human capital experts that can help you set up measures that are linked to your bottom line. Generally, the fees from these companies are going to be advisory services. There might be technology fees, but again, your goal is going to be identifying what you need to do to enhance your human capital ROI and value added, and how you can add value to your stakeholder relationships. So if you're taking an exam for our certification program, some of the questions that we're going to ask is, what is essential to improving the efficiency of traditional engagement tactics? Culture and obviously alignment is very important. Setting up clear ROI measures, looking at all the factors that could affect your outcomes. We might ask you to name a specific way to improve the efficiency of any engagement tactic, which would be along the same line, looking at the audience, what's worked in the past, what has not worked, what are the measures that you're going to use, how are they going to interrelate with other tactics, what is the common source of inefficiency in the use of engagement tactics, silos, lack of knowledge, lack of measurement, lack of CEO support, and who can technology help improve the use of almost any engagement tactic? Well, basically these enterprise engagement technologies I've told you exist today to put almost all of these processes on a single platform. So folks, I want to thank you very much for sitting through this 1-hour program in which we have covered every aspect of all the tools of enterprise engagement. We've gotten the perspective from experts in the field who have given us their view that we really need to move to a strategic and systematic approach, and that the winner, or I should say the advantages are, we're going to save money, we're going to have a better outcomes, we're going to get better results, and we're going to be happier. Thank you very much for attending this session, Class 4 of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance's Enterprise Engagement and Stakeholder Management Training Program.